it's Ellie and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hi, feel free to subscribe. For today's video I will be covering the yogurt shop murders of 1991. Just a disclaimer before we get into the video, in no way am I trying to offend anyone who is affected or was affected by this case. I just enjoy crime cases and I like to cover them on YouTube. So for today's case I will be talking about the yogurt shop murders that happened in 1991 in Austin, Texas. This was a vicious crime that claimed the lives of 4 innocent teenagers, and to this day it actually remains unsolved. On December 6th, 1991, 15-year-old Sarah Harbison and her 13-year-old friend Amy Ayers were hanging out at the North Cross Mall in Austin, Texas. They were hanging out for Sarah's sister Jennifer and her school friend and co-worker Eliza Thomas to be finished with their late night shift at the yogurt shop that was located on Hillside Strip Mall in the block of West Anderson Lane. Just after 10 p.m, Sarah and Amy headed over to see Jennifer and Eliza and help out, kind of clean the shop up for when it closed at 11 p.m. that night, for them all to head back home for a sleepover. Then just after midnight, Austin Police Department officer Troy Gay, who was out on patrol, noticed that there was smoke coming up from the strip mall. He reported the fire and then firefighters soon came, and once the flames were under control, which came from the yogurt shop, they realised there was actually a horrific scene that was under the blaze. As detectives went in, they realised that Sarah, Amy, Jennifer and Eliza were all dead. All girls were naked and they were bound and gagged with their own clothes. Amy's body was found in the middle of the back room, and Jennifer, Sarah and Eliza were all found kind of clustered in a corner. Eliza and Sarah were actually stacked on top of each other with Jennifer's body that lay close by. Their legs were spread open and an ice cream scoop was placed between one of the girls' legs. The burns that all the girls received was so bad that it was almost beyond the point of recognition. The killer or killers collected napkins and other flammable items, then doused them in like lighter fluid, and then also covered the girls in it, and then set that alight before also setting the rest of the shop on fire. Autopsies showed that all of the girls were shot in the back of the head execution style, and at least 2 of the girls had been raped. Bullets that were extracted from the autopsy would show that there were actually 2 different guns that were used, and this suggests police straight away that there could have been at least 2 killers committing this crime. The shop manager and police department determined that was around $540 that were missing from the store. So although money has been taken, so now it's also a robbery. As the investigation unfolded, police would receive over 50 confessions to these murders. There was one that actually came from known serial killer Kenneth Allen McDuff, who had a convicted history of teenage murders and was on death row for his crimes anyway. But he actually only admitted to these murders on the day of his execution, hoping that it would postpone his execution. But there wasn't actually enough evidence to tie him in with this, so his confession was overruled. 8 days after the murders took place, investigators were told to look into 4 teenagers. This was Maurice Pierce, who was age 16, who was actually seen at the North Court with a gun on the same night. And as we know, Sarah and Amy were over there before they headed to the yogurt shop, and the gun that he had was a .22 caliber handgun, and this was the same one used in the murders. Pierce was questioned with 3 of his friends that he was at the mall with. This was Michael Scott, Robert Springsteen and Forrest Wellborn. Fingerprints and hair samples that was collected from the crime and collected from the suspects did not match. Now, as the years went on and there was no arrest made, it was passed on to new detectives. In 1999, there were 4 suspects that were taken back into custody for these murders. And these were obviously the 4 main teenagers that they thought back in 91 that had committed this crime. Although back then they were released due to lack of evidence, when they were taken into questioning, Michael and Robert actually confessed to these killings, and this happened while they were in custody, so the police were convinced that they had their killers, because not only does it kind of, they have a confession now, as well as they were the main suspects back in 91. So the theory was that the 4 of them had planned to actually rob the yogurt shop, and then there was Scott, Springsteen and Pierce had entered the shop while Wellborn was outside on watch. Then something inside the shop took like a complete wrong turn. Authorities actually tried twice to charge Wellborn with these murders, but due to lack of evidence, once again, he was dropped. Also, the charges against Pierce regarding this murder were also dropped due to lack of evidence. Springsteen and Scott were actually tried separately and were both found guilty of capital murder. However, not long after the trials, concern started to raise when there were suggestions that Springsteen and Scott may have actually been innocent. There was no actual evidence linking them to the crime because just like the hair samples and the fingerprints, it didn't match any of them. They both said they were actually coerced into giving a false confession. There was actually a detective who was in this case who had to transfer because he allegedly extorted confessions in an unrelated case. And there was also a photo of another member of the police department who pointed a gun at Scott's head during his interrogation. Around 15 years after the murder, both convictions were actually overturned after the court found out that they had violated both of the accused's Sixth Amendment right to confess their accuser. Although authorities were actually convinced that the 4 teenagers were their prime suspects and the ones who actually committed the crime, there were actually 2 unidentified customers who were in the shop till close. 3 customers that left the shop literally just before closing time had noticed that there were 2 men sitting in kind of like the window seats of the shop and didn't seem like they were in a hurry to move. The customers were actually in there like so late that Jennifer actually turned the sign of the door over to say that they were closed now, so no new customers would come in. And now it was just like a waiting game for these 2 customers to leave. But obviously these 2 customers remain unidentified. The end result of this crime actually speculated if robbery was the motive, because only bringing out like $540, that isn't a lot of money to kill 4 people over, also cause like an arson attack just for that little amount of money. This must have been a random burglary if that was the case, because the shop didn't make enough money to commit murders over. If it wasn't the 4 teenagers or the 2 unidentified customers, it may have been that someone or multiple people followed Sarah and Amy from the other mall and kind of just kept their eye on them to see if they were with a parent or if these 2 young girls were just walking the streets on their own. But I mean, we don't actually know, do we? So overall, like, this is a sad case because 4 people died over, if burglary was the motive, it's a stupid amount of money that they took to kill 4 people. This was a crime that changed Austin forever, and it was known as the crime where Austin lost its innocence. The yogurt shop actually isn't there anymore, but outside there is a plaque for all 4 girls. In my opinion, I think maybe it was the 4 teenagers that committed this crime, because with a very like public shop in a mall where a lot of people could be coming in and out, it's a popular location. I don't think you should take fingerprints and hair into consideration, because they may have had like 500 customers that day, and it could be any of those customers that didn't actually commit this crime. But even like down to the handgun, I don't know, I'm just drawn more to it is the 4 teenagers that actually committed this. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up today's case. It still obviously is sadly unsolved, although I think we do know who committed this crime. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to stay home, stay safe. Please be sure to follow me on Instagram and subscribe to my channel. If you have any crime cases you would like me to look into, comment them below. And yes, thanks again, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.